I've grown accustomed to saying a few words, as we say in Ireland, in front of a portrait of my esteemed great-grandfather. Never in front of three of them, I have to say. And never with Abraham Lincoln staring down at me. So no pressure. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you to the organisers for this wonderful tribute on this, the centenary of the most important or the pivotal event in Ireland's history. Friends of Sinn Féin, distinguished guests, comrades. I, like all present here today, am thinking of family members, friends and comrades who are no longer in our lives, but who we wish were here with us on this 1916 centenary celebration, and we salute them and presume they are with us in spirit on this most historic of occasions, the anniversary of the event that changed the course of Irish history forever. So maybe you'll join with me in giving them a round of applause. And in that light, I wish to pay tribute to my late uncle, Connolly1, whose commitment, tenacity and vision led to the foundation and success of the Irish Arts Centre here in New York City, and we family members here present remember him today also. I know that Larry was instrumental in setting up and forming that amazing Arts Centre here in New York, ably assisted by many people, including Liam and Debbie King, and I think Liam King is here with us this evening also. So we salute all of those people as well this evening. We also pay tribute to and congratulate the latest recipient of the Freedom of the City of Dublin Award, Father Joe Mallon, son of Commandant Michael Mallon, the last surviving child of a 1916 leader. We wish him continuing good health and happiness. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak here at this most historic of locations. I'm very much aware that the hand of history is at my shoulder. The official US greeting to my great-grandfather took place here on the 15th of September, as Lorcan has said, 1902. The People newspaper of the time reported that at 7:30 all approaches to the hall were jammed with the waiting crowd. There was little standing room left. Connolly arising to speak was received with cheers and applause that increased in volume for several minutes. He was visibly affected by the responsiveness of the New York audience. He then set out his stall and what would remain his message throughout his life to the very end. The Irish Socialist Republican Party had as its task first the emancipation of Ireland. No person can be economically free who is not politically free, and no person can be politically free who is not economically free. While political dependence destroys the racial and other characteristics of the Irish, economic dependence destroys the people themselves. In Dublin, he continued, the majority of workers lived 7 or 8 families in one house. Such houses, for the most part, were owned by the shining lights of the Home Rule Executive Committee. Of Home Rule, he said, fighting foreign tyrants to put a native one in their place was no remedy. It was necessary to own the factories and the machinery. This was an auspicious launching of his tour. And so began his political journey throughout this great land. My great-grandfather, I'm proud to say, is now honoured not only with monuments in New York and Chicago, but also in Dublin and Belfast, marking the cities that shaped his life and that of his family. We're currently working on the Edinburgh Monument. His was an extraordinary life, a full life as he himself described it. The United States looms large in that remarkable story of his life and times. Here the family, like many before, would in time throw off the shackles of extreme poverty for the first time. Here he would set out in the path of his life's work, educating, agitating and organising. For the first time, without the constant fear for the safety, security and well-being of the family. Daphne Wolfe, writing in Labour and Dignity, James Connolly in America, describes him well in words that may well resonate with many of you here this evening. While he always fought for Ireland, she said, he did not always live there. His experience navigating life as an outsider, often poor and unemployed, most particularly in the United States, intensified his longing for Ireland, even while it shaped his perspective on how best to serve her. Those American experiences returned to Ireland with him and imbued his fierce Irish nationalism with the conviction that Ireland must create a society that revered justice over profits. Of that early time in America, my grandmother, in her 1966 biography of her father, refers to excerpts from newspaper reports of his lecture tours, and with immense pride she records them as follows. Father continued his speaking tour, she says. Here are excerpts from the newspapers of the day. A forceful speaker, well versed in the history and literature of his country, and in speaking draws from abundant store of knowledge gained both from great study and wide experience. The Cleveland Plain Dealer in Ohio. The Salt Lake City Tribune said, an eloquent Irishman. The Boston Herald, a man of pleasing personality, his manner is that of an orator, and his language that of a scholar. The Detroit Today, as he warms up to his subjects, his delivery grows more animated until it fairly scintillates with eloquence. And finally, the Register Tribune, Roswell, New Mexico, it will pay all students of political economy to hear him. It will be no fevered harangue of an anarchist, but the thoughtful expression of a man who believes that all government systems are now wrong, and it cannot help but be beneficial to hear what he has to say as a real privilege. I don't want to alarm or disappoint you here, but I regret to say that I am none of the above. But then, who is? I trust that these few words of mine will do justice to a golden generation of our people, the likes of which we have not seen since, the likes of which we are likely never to see again. So I will give it my best shot. They fought for a republic I'm asked to speak on. The 1916 Rising signalled the great coming together at that remarkable time in Ireland of four great movements: the national, the social, or labour movement, the cultural, and the feminist. This was a golden moment in our history led by a golden generation of our people, the men and women of 1916. The importance of this centenary celebration of them at this historic location and time cannot be underestimated. The opportunity to do so here in this great city, in the company of our exiled children in America, is a great privilege. How fortunate we are to be in a position to celebrate the centenary of a defining moment in our history when everything changed utterly. Not every generation is granted that opportunity, a centenary celebration. The 1916 proclamation of the Irish Republic reflects the great guiding principles of another great statement on democracy and freedom familiar to you all here, the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organising its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Ireland's freedom, like America's, did not fall from the clear blue sky. It was fought for, and in some cases died for, in ultimate sacrifice by members of a golden generation of our people. They deserve to be remembered. They deserve to be honoured. Remember me is all I ask, and if remembrance proves a task, forget. So wrote Nora O'Sullivan, a prisoner in the North Dublin Union in Cork City. So lest we forget, the men and women of 1916 were exceptional people at an extraordinary time in our history. They volunteered to fight an empire and free our country from foreign rule. That is what sets them apart. They volunteered to fight for freedom, their freedom, our freedom, from occupation, conquest, oppression, and colonial rule. That was a generation that refused to go to hell or to Connacht. They refused to live in slavery. They refused to live in subjection as second-class citizens in their own land, and they set out on bicycles, armed with rifles, to challenge the might of the British Empire. They did so for no monetary gain or reward, not a cent, not a shilling. And that is what sets them apart. We, all of us, are the direct beneficiaries of that cause, of that struggle, and of that sacrifice. The late Sean Cronin, in his public story of the Rising, wrote of them, "None considered himself a hero, but all were heroes. There were fewer than 900 of them, and they challenged an empire. They were ordinary men, and their military training was minimal. In that lies their glory. They believed that Ireland should be free. In that lies their greatness." The men and women of the Rising served the cause of Irish freedom with courage, bravery, and sacrifice, and through this celebration we salute them. And with immense pride we remember and honour them all. At the heart of that army was a citizens' army, a workers' army. Founded as a result of the naked brutality of a disgraced and discredited police force during the 1913 lockout, they would go on to play a crucial role in the Easter Rising, the pivotal event in our country's long and painful struggle for freedom and independence. In 1915, in the Workers' Republic, James Connolly clearly set out their intentions. "However it is for others," he wrote, "for us of the Citizen Army, there is but one ideal, an Ireland ruled and owned by Irish men and women, sovereign and independent from the centre to the sea, and flying its own flag outward over all oceans." Regrettably, there has been a concerted attempt in some quarters in Ireland to diminish not only that event, but those who participated in it. Part of a revisionist agenda, a counterfactual distortion of our history, an attempt to create a debate on the justification of the fight and the cause of Irish freedom, as if the struggle for a people's freedom from conquest requires justification. Home rule would have arrived in due course, we're told, had we waited for its arrival. As if our people were not living in the worst slums in Europe at the time, as if they were not dying. Of course, history shows that a fallacy. The War of Independence proves otherwise. The 1916 volunteers had no mandate, we are told, as if a mandate is required to resist slavery. To resist slavery by all means at one's disposal does not require a mandate. Slavery in itself requires a response. It requires action. If no mandate was required for the invasion and occupation of Ireland, it follows that no mandate was required to strike a blow for its freedom from that occupation and conquest. Of that conquest, James Connolly had this to say: "Fix it clearly before your eyes. National liberty, personal liberty, social security, all gone. The country ruled from its highest down to its meanest officer by foreigners. The Irish race, landless, homeless, living by sufferance upon the mercy of their masters, social and political slavery." The revisionists wish us to mark a shared history of nationalist and loyalist, but not the actual remarkable story of republicanism that grew out of the shared history of Catholic, Protestant, and dissenter. This is an airbrush approach to history, a selective approach, and it should be challenged. As journalist George Monbiot, writing in the Guardian newspaper in England, put it, the story of benign imperialism whose overriding purpose was not to seize land, labour and commodities, but to teach the natives English, table manners and double-entry bookkeeping, is a myth that has been carefully propagated by a right-wing press. But it draws its power from a remarkable national ability to airbrush and disregard our past. Likewise in some quarters in Ireland. there's been an attempt to diminish the importance of our revolution as just another event in a decade of events. Multiple wreath laying in recent times for all who died. A memorial wall plan for all combatants in Glasnevin Cemetery. And at one time a plan to include members of the British royal family in commemorative events. In honouring everybody in general, we of course honour nobody in particular. From the comfort of 21st century Ireland, we can of course debate such issues. How fortunate to be free to do so. Freedom is taken for granted by those who are free, but not by those yet to achieve freedom. We are out for Ireland for the Irish, James Connolly wrote, but who are the Irish? Not the rack-renting, slum-owning landlord, not the sweating, profit-grinding capitalist, not the sleek and oily lawyers, not the prostitute pressmen, the hired liars of the enemy. Not these are the Irish upon whom the future depends. Not these, but the Irish working class, the only secure foundation upon which a free nation can be reared. For our demands most modest are, Connolly declared, we only want the earth. Among their number were poets, writers, playwrights, teachers, musicians, actors, journalists, trade unionists, and ordinary working men and women, citizens, striving to create a society of equality rich in cultural activity and identity, with the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland from the centre to the sea, from the plough in the field to the stars in the sky. They contributed to the cultural revival of the nation, and they left us a rich legacy that needs to be embraced and cherished with pride. Pride in our language, not a dismissal of it. Pride in our flag, not a disregard for it. Pride in our national anthem, not a replacement of it. Pride in our pursuit of freedom, and not an apology for it. 2016 has now become a citizen celebration, a citizen's salute. Young people on whose shoulders the future of the country rests today are today understandably suspicious of politics and politicians. They now can be introduced to a generation that did not engage in land speculation, offshore bank accounts, tax evasion, or favours in return for cash in hand, a fumble in a greasy till. A generation prepared to sacrifice their lives for their country, rather than one of our time prepared to sacrifice their country for their lifestyles. And now they, that new generation, can ask the question, where stands the Republic for which the men and women of 1916 fought? Where stands the Republic for which they gave their very lives? An opportunity during the Celtic Tiger years to build a real republic, cherishing all of the children of the nation equally, was squandered and lost. An alliance of rogue developers, bankers, and compliant politicians were responsible for the economic collapse of our country, the effects of which we are still saddled with today. An opportunity to build a society of equality in housing, health, and education, the great pillars of a civilized society, was squandered and lost through the greed of a few. Those innocent of any wrongdoing were asked to pay the price, to carry the burden, to right the wrong. The republic of promises made, but soon forgotten, of pledges made, but soon broken, of bluff, of bluster, of stroke and spin. The politics of the club and career over the politics of the people, by the people, for the people. The failed politics of a painful past. The aims and ideals outlined in the 1916 proclamation, our Declaration of Independence, live on and remain to be fulfilled in the years ahead. Fortunately, the words of the proclamation cannot be rewritten, revised, or dismissed. 100 years later, it is as relevant today as it was then. Equal rights and equal opportunities for all citizens, cherishing all the children of the nation, the ownership of Ireland for the people of Ireland. The principles upon which a new generation can build a real republic with nobody marginalised, nobody abandoned, and no one forced by economic necessity, to leave the country of their birth, leaving heartbroken families behind in parishes fast becoming ghost towns. Their vision of freedom remains the yardstick by which we measure the march of the nation and the foundation of a republic serving the needs of all citizens. No country belongs to any particular group, neither a banking elite, a developer speculator elite, or a political elite. Its title deeds belong to all citizens, held in trust for future generations. We must return politics to the secure embrace of the people, citizens, the incorruptible inheritors of Irish freedom. This can be our golden moment. Politics must be returned to the safe embrace of the people, with public representatives serving the needs of all and not the interests of a few. Together, progressive forces can now set about building a real republic worthy of that title in a new political landscape, with nobody abandoned, marginalised, ignored, or forgotten. If all citizens have a stake in society, then all citizens will sacrifice to rebuild it. A caring and sharing society cannot be lost to the greed of a few. We, each and every one of us in our everyday lives, can reclaim it through rediscovering our willingness to reach out and support the less fortunate, the vulnerable, the lost, and the lonely. And that's the legacy of 1916. It's in all of us. It's in our collective DNA. Franklin D. Roosevelt, upon taking the oath of office in his second inaugural address in 1937, stated, "I see 1/3 of a nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. It is not in despair that I paint that picture. I paint it for you in hope, because the nation, seeing and understanding the injustice of it, proposes to paint it out. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little." And that test still stands today, and that's the challenge now before us. You, the friends of Sinn Féin, have by your efforts, in the words of the O'Rahilly, the only leader killed in action in 1916, helped to wind the clock in this centenary year in celebration, commemoration, and in tribute to that golden generation and 1916 relatives. Commend you for so doing. In his final court-martial statement, James Connolly stated, "We went out to break the connection between this country and the British Empire and to establish an Irish Republic. We believed that the call we then issued was, to the people of Ireland, a nobler call in a holier cause than any call issued to them during this war, having any connection with the war. We succeeded in proving that Irishmen are ready to die endeavouring to win for Ireland those national rights which the British government has been asking them to die to win for Belgium. Believing that the British government has no right in Ireland, never had any right in Ireland, and never can have any right in Ireland. The presence in any one generation of Irishmen, of even a respectable minority, ready to die to affirm that truth, makes that government forever a usurpation and a crime against human progress." Poet and sculptor Doris Sigerson said of the men and women of 1916, "They lit a flame within their land that long was ashes cold. With splendid dreams they made it glow true in their hearts of gold. They lit a beacon in their land, built of the souls of men, to make thee warm once more, Kathleen, to bid thee live again." Today, through your efforts, we salute and honour the supreme sacrifice of Pádraig and Willie Pearse, Connolly and Clark, MacDonagh, McDermott, McBride, Keant, Colbert and Mallon, O'Hanlon, Houston, Kent, Plunkett, Daly and Casement, the rank and file volunteers, the women of Cumann, the Na Fianna volunteers, the men and women of the Citizen Army. They challenged an empire upon which they were told the sun never set. On this centenary and at this most historic location, we honour them and we salute them. They must never be forgotten, for all of us are forever in their debt. Today we reclaim their vision not only because we have to, but because we choose to pick up the pieces, to carry the torch, to share the burden, to right the wrong, with hope in our hearts and the determination to create a full, free and happy life for all or for none. The light of liberty and freedom that shone across the Atlantic Ocean a century ago as a gift to Ireland may have dimmed in our time. It may have flickered, but it is not extinguished, can never be extinguished, will never be extinguished. The Irish abroad represent a scattered family, but a family nonetheless. They may have been forced by economic need to leave their homeland in body, but not in mind. The link remains, the memory holds, the connection never lost. Home is, after all, where the heart is. And so this celebration is rightly shared across the wide Atlantic Ocean, the plough, the stars, and the stripes as one. Together we mark the 1916 Rising Centenary at home and abroad, and echoing the words of President John F. Kennedy, it can be said that the torch, or on Clive Sullish, the sword of light, is now passing to a new generation. May it glow brighter in their care, under the starry plough, into a better future, guided by the great legacy left to us by those to whom we owe so much. Never had a man or woman a grander cause. Never was a cause more grandly served. They served the cause. And in the lines of that great song, familiar to you all, we may have had fine men, but we never had better. Glory o, to the bold Fenian men. Thank you for listening. Thank you for this great honour. May freedom, justice and equality reign forever in Ireland. May freedom, justice and equality reign forever in the United States of America. Go raibh míle, míle maithagibh go léir.